everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Let's Get Real, where we talk about real topics in a way that makes sense to all of us and just get as deep as possible. So today, our real topic is about fear. Are we going to let fear run our lives, or are we going to run fear out? So let's get to it. Kelsey, let's start with you since fear was your brainchild.
Yeah, no, I think that fear, it's a super interesting topic because it's in everybody's life, even if you don't realize that it is. So I think Janina is totally going to allude to this, but by being aware that fear is there and then harnessing that fear and figuring out what you're going to do with it. So are you going to let it control you? You're going to control it. I think that fear comes in multiple different ways. You fear something that's out of your comfort zone. And I think that progress comes out of your comfort zone, because if you stay stagnant and you're not afraid, I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, sort of. Fear's scary, but I think that just realizing that it's there and learning how to work with it and work against it to further yourself and the next venture that you're trying to endure, I think makes all the difference. So it's good and bad. Everybody, it has a bad connotation, but I feel like it really has a big impact on people if you can learn how to work with it, kind of.
I think you're absolutely right. Like there has to be a way where we let fear sort of work for us instead of us giving in to fear. So I love that idea. Thank you, Kelsey. Well, since you alluded to Janina, what do you have to say about fear?
Fear is a very necessary part of our lives, and it exists on a spectrum. So we need fear. It comes from our evolutionary selves. It helped us avoid getting eaten, but I think it can be tempered by our modern environment. So we can temper the anxiety that comes with fear and allow it to morph into intuition. So if something doesn't feel right, we can use our gut instinct to let it be. I'm fearful of this, so I'm going to like assess the risks around it and move away from it, or this intuition is going to help me grow. So fear is permeated every part of our life. It entered with the COVID cracks, and now it's part of every aspect of our life. And like you guys are saying, we can't let it control us, but we can let it exist within like the spectrum of other emotions and characteristic and things in our life. We can allow it to exist, but not let it take us over. So I think Coach Kat has a really good take on this as well. Thanks.
Take it away, Coach Kat.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, if we feed that fear monster, it takes over us. And we were talking earlier this morning about Brene Brown and her books and Gifts of Imperfection and the stories we create in our head. Like we create those stories and then all of a sudden they consume us. And then when we try to show up in any space, then we're derailed because the fear monster is like, don't do this, don't do that. Like you're trying to like rationalize in your head how to make a decision about whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, I think my analogy earlier too was, there's a big bear, it's going to eat you. Okay, that's totally different than, hey, where is that trigger coming from where I'm choosing? Because we're choosing not to make a decision. We're choosing not to take a step forward in our career. We're choosing not to grow through that discomfort in whatever we're experiencing, whether it's work or home. And so how do we say, okay, I see you, fear. It's coming from a space of uncertainty. Okay, well, what am I uncertain about? Maybe I need some more data to make a decision about, like, say, if I'm pivoting my career, or we were talking earlier about security, and even though our backgrounds may not be in security, maybe we be a private investigator. Okay, well, what do I need to know? Instead of like, oh, I don't know anything, so I'm going to go hide in my blanket fort with a pie and a fork. And it's like, oh yeah, it's my favorite analogy, right? It's like, oh, I just fed into all of that fear, and now I'm like stuck in like neutral, and I can't move my car, my life, anything. So yeah, I think it's like, okay, I see you, and what do I need in order to be able to move forward and get out of that space of stuckness?
I love that. And it's so interesting, especially, we all started Let's Get Real specifically to talk about how sometimes, women or people of color, or anyone who's different sort of, is unable to put themselves out there in the workspace because of that fear. And think about it, the very first thing that sometimes we feed into is, I personally have done this to myself, where I won't apply for a job because I've already discounted myself. I've discounted my skill set or my experience. I don't qualify for this. Who am I to say that I don't qualify for something? That's the fear talking, right? And I think one of the things that we can really do is lean on our community. When we start to sort of see fear in for what it is, it's sort of like a stopgap, right? Like it's almost a safety net. Like, oh, like I'm gonna just not do this because I'm afraid of the outcome, or I'm afraid that it's gonna be like the worst case scenario. And instead, I think if we shift our mindsets to say, hey, it's not going to be the worst case scenario. It could be the complete opposite, and I could show up to be, the best version of myself. I can lean on my community that can tell me, I am good enough, and they sort of like push you forward. So I say, let's kick fear out of our mindsets and really turn it into, let's be bold. Let's forget fear, and let's think of it as risks, and let's think of it as like, I am being someone that I need myself to be. So Kelsey, we'll start with you. Maybe if you want to give an example of when you experienced fear and you instead turned it into something much more positive.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think also too, like realizing everybody's fears are different, because I may be really comfortable doing something, whereas someone else that I'm trying to work with is not comfortable doing something. So give it a second too, and realize that you're probably judging them indirectly and unintentionally, because why are you freaking out about this? Like, why is this a big deal? When in reality, they're nervous, right? So I think just that is something that I thought of as you guys were all talking. But I think a really good example of this, and one that's totally stood with me, is when I was in college. I did a service trip to the Dominican Republic, and I taught English to students for 14 days. It was the most amazing experience ever. I was terrified to go. Like it was the first time I ever traveled out of the country, and I was in college. So I just traveled the US. I didn't really travel much before college, but now it's like my favorite thing to do, pre-COVID, of course. But I think just like I was almost talking myself out of going on the trip. And I was selected. I was one of 10 people selected in the university to go. So I should be really excited about this, right? But I was terrified. I'm like, okay, we're living at the poverty line. That's out of my comfort zone, right? We don't have flushing toilets. That's also really out of my comfort zone. We have to take malaria pills and all these crazy medications because we're going to a place that is not what I'm used to, right? So fear slapped me directly in the face. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. I don't really want to go. I'm not sure. And it was during Christmas. So it was the day after Christmas that I took off, and I missed New Year's with friends. So I applied because I was passionate about it. So after multiple conversations, I went. Best experience ever. Met some amazing friends. Helped some beautiful children learn English, but also learned a lot about myself because it was full English immersion. So I had to speak English and try to relay the message to them as they didn't speak any English. So super cool experience, amazing, but definitely something where it was way out of my comfort zone. And I didn't realize it was, because I do a ton of volunteering. And in college, I used to volunteer a bunch as well, like even weekly, but that was a different kind of volunteering, and it was out of my comfort zone. So the fear totally got me at the beginning. And thankfully, I did not let it
I
take
love
me.
that.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
So
I think really, really taking taking on the experience of something that's so different from what you experience like normally. And there are times where people might even say, Kelsey, you don't need that, you already do volunteering work, like you don't need to go. And so it's not just like your fear, but the fear of others, and just saying no, like no more to that fear. I'm going to push through regardless. So I love that. Awesome. Janina, what about you? What's an example that you might have?
Okay, so I have experienced quite a lot of fear around rejection. And recently in a professional space, it was applying for something that I thought I would get rejected from. And that came from the swelling issue inside my head. And so I decided to quantify the fear. Initially, it just manifested as anxiety. And then I realized it's actually fear. And then it's actually fear of rejection, that I'm not good enough, that there's somebody better than me. So what I did is I contextualized it. I used my community around me as a resource, and I helped get some context about this fear. And I realized it's just worries that actually are the negative voices, but on the other side is also the positive voices of the what if you are good enough. So yeah, using the community around me, whether it's my work friends, whether it's my personal friends, my sister, you guys, using them to contextualize the fear and then overcome it. So it was important because it upped my game when I was interviewing, but it's also important not to let it overcome me. So that was my experience of overcoming fear.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Gina. I think I've actually had some very similar experiences where, one of the things that that everyone in my community had always told me was, find yourself a good mentor. Like, your success is very much connected to the people who will, teach you. They will push you forward. And I always had the fear of, well, why would anyone want to mentor me? Like, I'm just a person. I'm not good enough. I don't have any like true skill set in this space. Why would anyone want to sort of back me up? And I think just sort of pushing through that fear and kind of saying, you know what, no, I'm going to just go ahead and push right through. I met so many incredible people. I've had some amazing mentors over the years. And sometimes what we don't realize is our mentors are looking for mentees, right? Because we all need validation. We all need to sort of push our information or our knowledge forward. So I think what we need to remember is it's not just our own fear, but it's others as well. Like, let's just try to think through it, not from our own mindsets, but others as well. Coach Kat, let's close it out with you, our wisest of the Let's Get Real crew. What is your example of fear and how did you overcome?
Yeah, I was thinking about while each of you are talking, and I think the most recent example I can give is I was in one of our clients' offices yesterday, and she's a CEO, and she has so much energy and presence, and she's super calm, but so much energy. So like she fills the room, and she's talking about all the politics and things that she's dealing with, and I'm her counterpart out in the world doing some really good work on some programming to serve family businesses and privately held organizations. And so I'm trying to get out of my mouth, here's what I feel needs to happen. Here's the board. Underneath the board, we need this. And this is why, like, strategically, that's how my brain works. That's why she hired me, is to do this work. And then all of a sudden I could feel it starting to come into my chest. And like, I start to like do this in the chair and deflower. And I caught myself and I was like, what's going on? I took a really deep breath. And it was like I was starting to get in my head, I don't have value, imposter syndrome, like all of those things. And Janina, to your point, like I looked at her and I was like, I'm modeling after a healthy female leader to share my voice. And I do have all the skills. So then all of a sudden it was like that song, Let It Go. I'm not going to sing because we all know I can dance. I can't sing. So I was like, I took 3 breaths in my nose and out my mouth, and breathe from my heart, which is what I learned from my coach. And I just kept talking. It's like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I just shared the information and I gave the statistics behind why this made sense and how this will help this community and support her. And she's like, yeah, that's why I hired you. Oh, okay. Well, cool. I'll go do the work now. Thank you. It was like, at first I was like, is this mom? I'm coming in. I need validation. But yeah, again, the technique again is like breathing, grounding, being okay, not feeding that fear, because then it does derail us and it doesn't allow us to show up as our whole selves and bring everything we can to that moment. So,
wow, I love that. There you go, folks. Do not feed the fear monster. Take a deep breath, know where the fear is coming from, contextualize it, and just go for it. Be bold, take some risks, and remember, fear comes from a place of negativity, and we're here in a place of positivity. So go forth and have an awesome day, and let's get real next time.